from the different projects and from different experience about, the development of solutions and approaches and models for building resilience in our water ecosystems in a quite quick changing climate situation. We all know that climate change has a great impact on the life of the daily life of everybody on this planet. We said several times that the planet, to some extent, is reaching its boundaries in terms of exploitment of the resources. But once that we concentrate our efforts to water and water-related sectors, we see that water might be, the most fragile area of the planet. That's because, available drinking water, available fresh water is very limited because of the matter that, across the years from the Industrial Revolution, we have been changing many things in our societies, which also include not only a better lifestyle standards, but also the matter that we produce waste and we pollute our environment in water, and water represents once again the essential resource that we use almost without realizing every day for hundreds and thousands of purposes. Everybody uses water, individual water, agriculture, food production depends on water. And at the same time, additional challenge that comes from the matter that all these changes in exploiting the resources of our planet also contributed to exacerbate the climate change, which is on the lips of everybody, which impact it's wide, sometimes difficult to understand, and quite difficult also to plan. But then on water, we know what's going on. We know what is the impact of climate change on water in terms of availability, in terms of extreme events, in terms of impacts on our societies. So today we are hosting, as I said, important speakers. We have a keynote from Richard Edelman, with the head of politics at EURECAT, the Technology Center of the Catalonia. He specialized in policy about climate change, energy, and water, with a lot of emphasis of citizen engagement and the effect of climate change on migration, gender equality, conflict, and health. Then from the ARSINOE project, we have Jaume Piera. She's an expert in environmental monitoring technologies based on innovative methods at the Institute of Sciences de Mar of Barcelona. Fred Hatterman from TransformAr, professor, deputy head of research department on climate resilience at Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, and is also the leader of the working group on hydroclimatic risks. And Matteo Dell'Amico from the project Impetus, is an hydrologist, snow scientist, CEO of WaterJet, with an Italian company which is devoted to decision-making support for water supply planning. I just add know that his company was shortlisted at the Water Innovation Europe 2024 for the award under the category Digital Water. So now I think that the time has come to enter into discussion, and I would like to invite Richard to take the floor and tell us, about Just to Survive. What is the role of the water sector in climate adaptation?
Thanks very much, Andrea, and thank you very much to ARSINOE for inviting me to speak here today. The question of water isn't a question of water. The question of water is a question of sustainability across all sectors and all aspects, both environmental, social, political, and economic. The reason why I'm actually here in Singapore at the moment is because I'm attending a series of meetings and a conference with regards to water surveillance, wastewater surveillance, both with regards to new pathogens which are emerging, but also to water resilience and the reuse of wastewater around the globe. Basically, what we're facing at the moment is a situation at a global scale where water is the central player in, shall we say, a film, a theater, a narrative, which has developed without us really searching for it, whereby climate change is influencing exactly the socio-political consequences of subjects such as, for example, health. Health is being affected, and it will be affected not just because of droughts and not just because of floods, which are obviously water-based problems, but also because of all of the other domino effects which will come as a result of us not addressing those water-based subjects correctly. The question of health, not just in Europe and in Africa, which is where we've been working originally, but also, for example, here in Southeast Asia, in South America, indeed all around the globe, what we are seeing is that health is also going to lead within the next 20 to 30 years to mass migration. Mass migration also results for a number of reasons in a worsening of the situation regarding gender equality. And then furthermore, all of the effects of climate change and all of these, which many of them are so definitely water-based, also are exasperated by conflict. At the moment, we can't actually say that climate change or a water-based issue has become the cause of conflict. There is some academic argument with regards to, for example, recent armed conflicts in Mali, that perhaps that may be the case. But basically what we have seen in situations, for example, such as the Sudan at the moment, or for example, in Yemen at the moment, or for example, in Afghanistan, or indeed the tragic events in Palestine, is that armed conflict is exasperating and is exasperated by the effects of climate change, and that we have a new phenomena in front of us, which has been called by the University of New Hampshire in the United States environcide, whereby conflicts now not only aim to kill populations and to kill armies, but that they also seek to destroy the basis of life in a certain region. And to do that, of course, the first target is going to be water. Now, all of this sounds extremely dramatic and perhaps to some people even dystopian, but the fact of the matter is that health, migration, gender equality, and conflict are intrinsically all linked, and they are all linked as well to climate change, which in itself is very much manifested by the subject of water. So the water sector has not only a responsibility to accept a central role in all of these essentially socio-political issues, but also socio-political actors such as politicians and society in general have to accept the importance of the water sector. So it has to be a reciprocal relationship that is developed. Now then, the water sector, and I've been quoted very often in a number of conferences for having said that, in my opinion, the water sector has traditionally in the past been extremely hermetic, that the academic sector, for example, as well, has had a tendency to not be able to communicate the incredible amount of knowledge which it has in an effective and clear way to the general population and to decision makers. And this is true, but it is also true as well that as Water Europe, and as, for example, I'm sure many members of these projects understand that water itself is sometimes it's very difficult to make that a political issue, which is what it needs to be. Therefore, there are a number of, how can I say it, pieces of advice, I would say, that I would basically advocate in order to situate water in the situation where it should be, but also in order so that the water sector itself understands its role with relation to those socio-political issues that I've already mentioned. The first thing is what we call data to knowledge. This is something that we've been promoting a lot. I've been seconded now for over 2 years to the United Nations, And at the United Nations, we've been working a lot on this issue of data to knowledge, data then to action. What do we mean by this? First of all, there is a lot of data out there. There are gaps. For example, the Global Environmental Monitoring System themselves say that they are not receiving sufficient information on the ground. But nevertheless, thanks to satellite observation, thanks to monitoring, we do have a fairly clear picture. And we also have a vast number of technologies and scientific solutions in order that we can offer to society to counteract the effects of water-based crisis due to climate change. However, that data needs to become knowledge. And what I mean by that is that the data, as opposed to objective information archived away somewhere, needs to become extremely accessible to all those who require it. And then as a result of that, the data and the knowledge can then result in action. And I'll explain a little bit later very quickly why and how that can become action. The next consideration that we need to take into account when we're discussing water within the issues of climate change and those socio-political issues that I've mentioned is that it's very important to follow the water cycle from source to sea. It's very difficult, for example, to just look at, for example, river basins and then not look at the effects on the oceans. It's very difficult to look at a specific river, such as, for example, the Nile Basin, and not take into account as well its effects on its hinterland. So it's very important that the water sector understands the connections and the deeply important connections beyond very often with regards to utilities, their area of administration. They need to be able to interact with and also understand the situation of similar counterparts in other parts of that river basin, or indeed with connecting oceans, or indeed with regards to the hinterland. The other subject, which has become almost a byword in environmental policy over the last 5 years, is the WEFE Nexus Plus H. And when we talk about the WEFE Nexus Plus H, we're talking about the deep relationship, which I know that many of the projects which are represented not only by ARSINOE, but also, for example, Impetus deal with, is the interrelation between water and energy and food production and the environmental ecosystems, but also health. And when we're talking about health, we're not talking just about human health, but we're also talking about the health of biodiversity and the health of the environment. In other words, the One Health approach. And all of these subjects are related to water in the same way that all of the other subjects, water, food, and ecosystems, are related to energy, and that food is related to all of them as well. And ecosystems obviously are related. So there's this terrible and incredibly complex interaction, which the water sector itself must first of all accept, but also that all the other sectors must understand is highly influenced by the situation regarding water. And then finally, and the most important for me as a political scientist, as the issue of engagement. Now then, academics, and I'm probably going to become very unpopular for saying this, but academics tend to work from one funded project to another. We indeed are here talking today at the behest of a number of funded projects, in this case, ARSINOE and its sister projects. Now then, these projects are extremely important. They are established by, in this case, the European Commission, and they have a certain life period. And what they do very well is that they go into certain pilot sites and they work on those pilot sites. There are, however, in what I would describe as real-world situations, a number of problems. First of all, researchers and also water utilities, when they are working on this type of program, on this type of project, they tend to parachute into a specific community. And what they do then is that they use that community, shall we say, not in a bad way without any bad intentions, but very often they use that community as a guinea pig in order to be able to say, well, we have done citizen engagement. They may undertake some techniques which are absolutely vital and necessary to test, and it's perfectly valid. So I'm not criticizing it, but there are dangers. One of the dangers is that when a project has been completed, that the action at a local level stops, because the only thing that that creates is mistrust. So therefore, one of the things that I myself am promoting, that the United Nations is promoting, and that the European Commission as well is also beginning to promote, is the idea that it is the citizens in those local communities who come to the research sector, who come to the public sector, who come to the cultural sector in what we describe as the quintuple helix at a local community level. And the citizens tell us what their needs are, what their problems are, what are the challenges that they are facing, and that what are the solutions that they require from us, the research community. Now then, this has been made possible by the establishment, for example, Water Europe. They create water-orientated living labs, which are perfectly legitimate. The World Water Quality Alliance, of which I'm the coordinator, we've created local water forums in local communities around the globe. And the idea is that the citizen is not only used as a participant and a passive receiver of information from a European finance project. And I'm not saying that all projects give the citizens simply a passive role. Very often as well, they're attempting to give them a far more proactive and almost leadership role. But that is what is necessary, is that the local citizens themselves become the leaders. I gave the example in a conference a couple of weeks ago in Brussels, for example, of a community that I know very well in Nairobi called Kibera, where they are faced with dramatic water-based challenges. Now then, there is nobody who knows better those challenges and what needs to be done than the very citizens themselves. And what we are promoting is that projects such as Impetus, such as ARSINOE, go to these communities and make contact with social activists. Those social activists don't need to necessarily be concerned with the environment. They don't necessarily need to be involved in anything with regards to water. But what we have discovered through experience with local communities is that a social activist is always a social activist. And that if you go to them and you say, look, what are the problems with regards to water in your community? They will tell you. Not only that, they are the people who are best equipped to speak to communicate with, and to engage their fellow citizens, far more so than researchers or politicians or academics who are coming in from the outside. And this means, therefore, that we have a far more open form of government, but as researchers, we are also receiving not only a far more intense form of engagement, we are also helping to guarantee much more stable exploitation after the projects have been completed, and therefore have social continuity and consensus. But also at the same time, what we are achieving is a question which is absolutely essential if we are to be able to face the water challenges of the future. And that is the creation of trust. And I think that to making those basic remarks, I hope that that serves as an introduction to the discussions that you will be having during the course of this session now. Over to you, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Richard. I was impressed by your last word, I mean, the creation of trust. Well, where you go, I mean, to local communities, I mean, water is a local factor. I mean, it's a local challenge and must be addressed locally. And, you mentioned also working with, let's say, structural, semi-structured arrangement like water-oriented living labs. But then in the end, I think, yes, the creation of trust means also the creation of common understanding. And this creation of common understanding, it is, I mean, maybe I might be wrong. I mean, the main factor in order to go ahead with common goals and find the necessary resources in order to address the challenges of the water system, particularly in this quick climate changing landscape.
I mean, just to interrupt you there, the question of engagement is the result of a creation of awareness. Now then, the path that we took, and I've been working on this now for over a decade, and I was indeed a local politician myself, and citizen engagement has always been very important, but we've been making one very dramatic mistake, which is that we have been going to the citizens and saying, you've got a problem and you need to be aware of that. When in fact, what we've discovered to be far more effective is that if we go to a local community, no matter where it is in the world, in their language, through the voice and the eyes and the ears of local people who are from there, and so therefore are trusted, as we said at the end of that section, what you get is that you get the local citizens, you get that community saying, look, we have this problem, or we have that problem. For example, if you go to a farming community, they will tell you the problems which they are facing in their community. If you go to a community, for example, Kibera, which is the largest slum in Africa, they will tell you, and they know far better than we do, what their real concerns are. What you do then is that instead of saying, look, we know that you have a problem and this is your problem, and telling them what they probably already know, but also appearing to be very condescending in what somebody once called academic colonialism, which is, I think, a bit drastic, the term myself, but that's actually been described in a number of academic papers. But what you are doing is that you are making the citizens the initiators of the action. And so therefore, what you're testing then is how the technologies and the knowledge of the academic community can be applied to those real life situations. And when, for example, I mean, we've all been involved in the creation of projects, and normally before the project begins, you identify communities and you name them and you actually make them project partners. But if, however, if in the first part of a project, what you do is that you go to different communities in your target regions or in your target countries, then what you can do is that you can go to communities and say, look, we have a question. What, in your opinion, are the problems that you are facing with regards to water? Yeah, and they will come back to you with that. Then if you say, look, would you like to co-design and co-implement solutions to that, and we will give you the technical and the scientific support which you require for that, then they respond, because the trust is automatic, because they are trusting themselves, because it's considered to be their project. Now then, we gain as the scientific community and the research community, we gain as a result of that, because we then get citizen scientists who are not being asked to put a test tube, for example, into the local river without really understanding why. No. What they are doing is that they are continuing the work which they themselves began, supported by us. And so then we come into what we call the science embassy theory. The science embassy theory is that you have a local community that has an academic or a scientific institution there to support it when required. And what we've also discovered, that as a result, this is creating a far more devoted, far more long-term form of citizen science. So therefore, the researchers are gaining, but also institutions such as, for example, the Global Environmental Monitoring Systems of UNEP, because we're able to fill those gaps with motivated and aware citizen scientists. Why are they aware? Because they're aware of their problems, and they are then made more aware of the solutions.
Great, and I mean, this is, I mean, it's a full landscape of actors, and when it goes, I mean, to resources? What do we need more?
What we need more than anything, and this is absolutely essential, is the capacity to communicate. The scientific community, the research community tend to communicate much better with their peers through, for example, peer-reviewed articles, for example, at conferences such as the one which I'm attending now, although here we have also had people at a ministerial level from all parts of Asia. But basically, it's been addressed to fellow researchers and to fellow theorists and to certain administrators from Southeastern Asian regional organizations and the European Commission. Now then, what happens is that we're not communicating with the general public. We're not communicating in a clear way. And one thing that I always notice, I mean, I'm a political scientist and I've also been an actor. And so I never use PPTs when I'm talking. And one thing I was commenting to a colleague from the European Commission here today is that all of the scientists tend to use very, very dense PPTs with loads of words which no one can have time to read while they're talking. And the problem is that scientists are not taught how to communicate. One of the things that we want to do is to train scientists to communicate, to make their knowledge accessible to lay people such as myself. I'm not a scientist, I'm a political scientist. So therefore, for example, colleagues of mine at Eurocat, if they're explaining to me something technical, they can use me as a litmus test, because if I understand it, it means they've explained it in a clear manner. And I think that what we need in general with regards to the creation and the education of scientists and technologists and researchers is that when they begin their first degree, they are also, and it sounds ridiculous, but I do mean it, they are also receiving classes on how to communicate. They're almost receiving classes of theater, yeah? Because the best researchers are the people who can communicate to the masses. Because then with clear communication, you're creating an emotional response. And the emotional response gives you the social continuity, which guarantees as well a future political consensus. And that's very, very important for what we're trying to do if we're addressing issues such as climate change.
Which helps, I mean, at large, I mean, to mobilize resources. I mean, all this, I mean, we need also to mobilize the existing resources in a coordinated and holistic way. Otherwise,
absolutely, because resources, I mean, basically, we're talking about economics. Now then, the people who have their hands, shall we say, on the purse are the decision makers. You need to be able to convince the decision maker that this is a priority. In order to do that, you've got to, first of all, speak to that politician, not to go and ask them for funding and for them to say why. No, you need to go to the politician and say, excuse me, what is it that you need? What are your priorities? How can we help you? That's the first thing. But at the same time, you need to work with the electorate, the local communities, because one local community is an electorate for a municipality, but thousands of local communities become a national electorate. And they become then very, very important. And if it's the electorate themselves that are demanding something, then even the most obstinate of leaders will listen. There was an example yesterday in Kenya. So, for example, President Ruto of Kenya was basically trying to impose a new financial law, yeah, a new tax law. And the populace went mad. It wasn't politicians who went against him. It was the people in the street. It was the local communities. It was indeed people with whom we are working with regards to water from the districts of Korogocho and Kibera. They were the people who have had enough and they were rioting. And today he said, all right, the people have spoken, I'm not going to do it. Why? Because he knew he wasn't going to hang on to power. There was no way. I'm not saying that with regard to water-based issues, we need to have people rioting. I'm not advocating that. But what I am saying is that politicians will respond to something that is popularly perceived as necessary. And that is our job, is to communicate that necessity, which is why within the quintuple helix, the local community level, one of the actors who are most important are the cultural actors. Yeah, the press, artists of all types. These are people who are capable of creating an emotional response, and they need to be employed. Populism, which is growing in Europe and indeed the United States, as we all know, and certainly in the United Kingdom, is based on the fact that they use social media to create very digestible, easy to remember sentences and forms of communication. We need to do the same thing. We need to be able to combat what Montesquieu, the philosopher, described as nonage. Nonage is when you form an opinion of something based on something that you've read, but it may have no foundation whatsoever. And then you immediately adopt that as being fact. We need to combat that nonage with knowledge, with objective scientific fact, but communicated in a way that is as digestible and as accessible as the, frankly, rubbish that is purported by so many politicians in so many different countries around the globe.
Fully agree, absolutely. And many thanks. I mean, and of course, I mean, thanks for this. I mean, outstanding keynote. I mean, really gave us really a full landscape of what is needed. I mean, to go forward. I mean, to go ahead. We need inclusion for sure. We need participation, and this also, I think that it's a kind of magic word, and that's the reason for which now, I mean, I'm introducing, I mean, the next speakers that will come from the three sister projects of ARSINOE, and we start with Jaume Pierre, and Jaume. We're going to speak about, I mean, the engagement strategies to maximize long-term participation in volunteer monitoring programs. So this, I mean, this is the magic word of participation, which is, I mean, basic in terms of mobilization of resources. I mean, the common understanding of what, I mean, it is the challenge of what is that how to achieve and how to address the challenge, how to achieve the goals. And well, I mean, now, I mean, the floor is yours. I just recommend the speakers. I mean, this is a pitch presentation or a short speech. So you have around 5 minutes time for your presentation. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Being that I need a short presentation, I will use a PowerPoint. I'm a little bit more classical on that, but I hope you. So basically, in our case, is how to engage people to maximize long-term participation. As Richard mentioned, more than having a project, we think that it's important to have a platform because it's a long-term issue, and we that's why we designed this platform called Minca. Minca means in Quechua collective work for the community, and it's the spirit on participation, how to engage people on this collective work for the community. As it has been mentioned already, our vision is that we will have several local projects dealing with local actions, but in a way that we could integrate all these kind of local activities in a larger frameworks in which then we can address global issues like, for example, in the particular case, the resilience in a changing climate. But and again, as Richard was mentioned, this idea of quintuple helix in every single local project, we are inviting or identifying many different types of community: the volunteers, the research institutions, but also these company, NGOs, schools. Richard was mentioned also these artists, whoever that connects with the community, and also the government organizations that facilitate the participation. I will go further on that. It's important also to keep in mind that we have like two different levels of dialogue. In a sense, for example, that whenever the platform talks with the citizens or talks with the academia or decision makers, the way we interact is very different. For citizens, then that needs to be short-term interactions. We cannot engage people thinking that they will participate for months and months without any kind of feedback, and later on they are in a knowledge list in a paper that appears 2 years later. this is not the way to engage. So we need to think ways to connect with the people, to dialogue with the people at very short time. Yeah, and that means in a question of minutes, most hours, but not more than that. However, whenever we talk with the decision makers and academics, we need to digest all this information. We need to create products that probably takes months, to be, knowledgeable, indigestible in a way that it's useful for academic, or why not for policy making processes. So we can imagine then that this platform needs to interact with different local communities, and it's very important to understand that each local community has its own local interests and obviously its own local languages. We think that whenever it's done, it needs to be with local languages, and it means that we need a lot of multi-platform. And that's why, for example, in Minca, now we are collecting a wide range of languages, and also we open to translate to others. Again, we use participatory systems that allows whoever knows English and can translate in different languages. So our idea is that at the end, we will have a very long list of languages available. And knowledge barrier is also very important. If we put the example, for example, if we deal with this concept of One Health in the particular question of, for example, biodiversity loss, many people would be able or willing to participate, but if they take pictures, they don't know how to, validate or identify such a kind of organisms. And it's thanks to this, I would say, community that helped them later on to validate. It's what we call community identification. Just to give you an example, and here a real example. One of the users, she took a picture of a snail. She didn't know which snail was, but part of the community helped her in identifying, and finally we get the snail identified and also located in the proper place. If we think in this particular case, let's put a particular example within the ARSINOE. In ARSINOE, one of the use cases is recording biodiversity in Athens metropolitan area. So we can identify the people that will collect such a kind of biodiversity. With the academic institutions, it will be the University of Thessaly, in combination with our institute, to support Minca. But also we need this mobilizing community. In this case was the Center of Education of Environmental and Sustainability, ETHES, that works particularly in the metropolitan park of Antoni Tritsis. So you can see, for example, that we have created such a kind of community. And in particular, in that case, you can see that there is the particular project related to this local community. And finally, we end up with 42 environmental school teams collecting information. And you can see that in a relatively short period of time, they provided 8,600 observations and more than 1,300 species. This is the kind of collective local activity that later on could be integrated at long term with other activities and other local projects to have this kind of biodiversity collection. And this is what the example that we would like to think. And I guess that I connect with Richard in a sense of integrating the local activities, the local actors within all these projects to make it, more effective and engageable. And thank you.
Thank you, Jean. I really see the point. I mean, and there was, an issue about, the language, because of course the language could be an unbelievable barrier or an unbelievable facilitator. So, yeah. And you said, you are going to translate, documents and whatever is needed in order to develop and to implement the action. But can you tell us more, about also the reaction of beneficiaries or recipients when they understand that they can directly read their own language?
Yeah, I think that the key point is that if you use their own language, they much easier understand the problems. And in some cases, if you identify the problem locally, you can take some decisions later on. I have not mentioned here, but one of the ideas is to connect this. As you see, Minca is basically, collecting data, but we need also deliberative platforms. Now, it's not within ARSINOE, but our idea is to connect what we call collaborative observational platforms with deliberative platforms. In those cases, you have platforms in which you can exchange ideas, but supported ideas with this idea of, evidence-based policies. So we are not just discussing, just an opinion. We can collect data that is related to that problem. And so people can be, empowered to be prosumers in the sense that they produce the information and then they use this information for local deliberation. But we think that everything has to be done in local languages. Otherwise, there are these, as you mentioned, these language barriers that, breaks or, it's very difficult, even because there are so many, very social activists or very, important people that they do not speak fluently in English. So let's allow them to discuss in their own local languages and take decisions at that level.
Also, because this, facilitates their role as multipliers. That's otherwise it's difficult. To be the witness. To get the information, to get. The point is that to exchange and to share with the others. So yes, we have also seen that with the experience of the world-oriented living labs that we are running in Water Europe within the partnership Water for All. Well, yes, also realizing event in the local language, it's an advantage. It's an advantage for everybody. It's a benefit for the audience. It's a benefit for having, the information be shared, easily and at a deeper level. So, thank you so much for your contribution. And now, from the magic word of participation, we jump into quite a debated topic, which is called water energy nexus. And Fred Atterman from TransformAr, you are very much welcome to take the floor, and your contribution about improving climate resilience of the water energy food nexus, and about a particular demonstration of water-related innovation packages. Tell us how it works. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot for the nice introduction. My topic is about improving climate resilience, and it is in the end a nexus, and when we are talking about water. When you look into the events we had recently, last year, also this year, we had droughts start of the year in Spain and the Mediterranean, in Italy, and the people prayed for water. Water came, and we had the heavy floods. And it was not only last year, it happened again this year. It happened in many parts of the Mediterranean. The same in Greece, where also we had the forest fires before, huge forest fires, and then 800 millimeters of precipitation in one day. So this was also something never experienced. And I show this because the point is, I think, and this is, I think, clear, we are in the midst of climate change and our infrastructure is not adapted. So we are behind. And now the topic is, of course, how to improve. And in this context, we have these 6 demonstrators across Europe and in also Guadeloupe, which is part of Europe, by the way. For example, the city of La Baranta, the municipality of Jorvik, Guadeloupe, as I said, West Country in England, Oristano in Italy, Galicia, and the city of Egalo, which is part of Essence. And many of them are around cities, and I come back to this. So these are the areas where we do our research, and all of them tackle climate risks related to water, floods, droughts, or which are strongly related to water. And this is, again, the nexus. And of course, we are part of a community of projects. Here you have the case studies, demos, how they are called, living labs. We have in the 4 projects, ARSINOE, Impetus, TransformAr, and REGILIENCE, and how they nicely cover Europe, and we are part of it. Yeah, I only want now, with the time I have, to point at one example, because many of our demos are around cities, and here you possibly have heard, and I'm sure you have heard about the sponge cities and how this concept may help to counteract climate change. So a sponge city, for example, or the idea is that the water which falls into the area also infiltrates there. This helps against flash floods on the one hand, and this was the original purpose, but it also helps to cool and to increase humidity in soils and also groundwater recharge, so to generate water locally. And as one example, here's some results, how this effect might be. And you see here the city of Athens, and Egalo, one of our demos, is a part of it. And the local citizens have the problem of flash floods and also of heat, for example. And this is what you try to tackle with sponge cities. And here you see the effect of unsealing. What you firstly see is that we have an increase of heavy events in the area, more and more intense precipitation events and more precipitation per event. And without unsealing, you would have also an increase of flash floods, and this is a dark blue one. By unsealing, partly you already can counteract. And the lowest one is really like a sponge city concept. First of all, much less risk for flash floods, and secondly, also more infiltration, and this cools. And in this context, Richard, for example, told us about that everything. So this is the effect of unsealing, less surface flow, less risk for flash floods. And we already heard that water is related to health, and this is shown in this context here, that and this is a wet bulb globe temperature. This is an apparent temperature, which is a function of not only maximum temperature, but also like humidity, radiation, and wind speed, and how it increases with climate change. So there's a steep increase, and below 28 degrees of this index, people really suffer, and also outdoor activities are limited, and mobility increases. And now, by having a sponge city concept, you will increase evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration cools a city, and this would be, for example, the effect which you could gain by having this transformation into a greener city, a more healthy city. This was one of the concrete examples, which I have time to show you in this 5 minutes. I also was asked to advertise the next upcoming seminar. Sponge City is also kind of a nature-based solution, and there will be a seminar devoted to nature-based solutions next week, the 3rd of July, organized by CMCC, our partner, and it is called Nature-Based Solutions, Devising Actions to Achieve Rapid and Far-Reaching Transformational Adaptation. Yeah, and this is at the end, and thank you for the attention.
Thank you so much, Fred. I mean, a quick question for you, because then in the end, I mean, the world energy food nexus, I mean, it's quite difficult, I mean, to attack, because I mean, it has many sides. I mean, whether you touch them, and then there's an impact, I mean, on the related sectors. But I mean, should I ask you, being an expert, I mean, about, I mean, this kind of nexus, I mean, what is, I mean, the biggest challenge that you see in the future if you do not find, I mean, adaptable, possible, feasible solutions in order to decouple the nexus?
Yeah. To me, the biggest challenge, or the first step, and also coming back to Richard, is awareness rising. People should at least know about what is going on. So this is the first step, that to act, that you know about the problem. Yeah. The second is that climate change will be ongoing. So we have to counteract the too strong climate change. But then also with climate change, we will always lag behind. and then our infrastructure will always be not adapted to the events we have in 10 years or in 20 years, because it really takes time. So we have this nature-based solution, we have the technical solutions, but to implement them takes time. And therefore, for me, the most important and the priority is awareness rising, and then in case of an event, early warning, and so that you at least, in case of a flood, for example, help people to survive. But the very biggest challenge in this nexus is that we have still a silo thinking, and that people have to talk to each other, and each has a set. And this is the concept of the nexus. Whenever you do something in one of the sectors, you influence also the outcomes of other sectors. And this has to be looked at in an integrative way. People know this nowadays. And we have, for example, this integrated river-based management plans at the European scale, also driven very much by the Commission, this European Water Framework Directive and the Flood Directive. But in the end, when it comes to the point, there's still silo thinking. And this is, I think, one of the biggest challenges.
Thank you. Crystal clear. Now, it's the time of the next speaker, which is Matteo Dell'Amico. And Matteo will speak about, the digital twin of the catchment area. And, which is, well, I cannot say it's a really very new concept for modeling and prediction, but it is, something that is really taking more and more strength in the overall capacity of our ecosystems to control on themselves. And Matteo, you're welcome to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's really a pleasure to be invited in such a prestigious conference, and I'm happy to present our project, which is called Impetus, and the concept we as a company are building, which is the digital twin of a catchment. So first, a few words on Impetus. So Impetus is a Horizon 2020 project, so EU project, very broad in scale, and so it has 4 years of activity from October 2021 to October 2025. And sees the participation of 32 countries 32 partners in 9 EU countries. You can see here, the wide participation of people in this project. And in fact, one of the key objectives of this project is to implement, let's say, adaptation activities, solutions in different climatic areas. So we go from the far Arctic Norway to the southmost Mediterranean climate, passing by Atlantic boreal coast climate, continental in Germany, and as I said, Mediterranean in Greece. And we are particularly involved in the mountain, let's say, case studies, which is located in the Alps, and in particularly in the region of Italy where I come from, which is Trentino. And the objective of this implementation are manifold. We are implementing or testing new insurance products, innovative insurance products, and let's say testing the elevation of cultures, in particular of vineyards in elevation to cope with climate change. How to cope, so let's say to foster the material heritage, new participatory risk management, and what we are particularly doing is the development of a decision support system for the water management. And this is the objective of my talk. And the question that we are asking are, how much water is available for my plant? You can say it can be, let's say, hydropower plant, which is very, very relevant in the territory in the Alps, or it can be an irrigation plant. And how can I anticipate extreme events? And these questions are really important, but they are becoming much more important now with climate change, because if we look at the historical data of a time series, we can find a mean and a variance. What we see is that climate change is expanding the curve, and the mean does not change dramatically, but the variance does. And this simple fact pose a lot of stress, because it's much more likely to pass from one extreme to the other, so from drought to flood. And I always say that these two are the two faces of a medal. So we are going to be more likely subject to drought as we are to floods. And how to cope with this challenge? So historical mean is becoming a bad predictor. So you cannot rely exclusively on historical data to take decisions. So a new concept we are developing, which is called the digital twin of the catchment. So we are going to see at the catchment, have a look at the catchment area, as it was said also at the beginning in the keynote speech. So enlarge the view from your single point of abstraction to the whole catchment, and see all the data that can be used to in this modeling concept, from weather forecast, satellite data, and in situ data, and as well use physical models and machine learning. So with this kind of modeling concept, it is possible to digitally reconstruct the water cycle at the basin area. And we are going to use this. This is the kind of an image that shows how it could look like a digitization. You will digitize the subcatchments that are relevant, maybe where we have a reservoir with a dam. And so we are digitizing the subcatchment, and each of these subcatchment is related, somehow linked to the other through the river network, but can be related also through a kind of hydraulic pipe that is providing water from another lateral catchment to the reservoir. So the digitization comprises both the natural environment and the anthropogenic environment. So then we feed this digital twin with forecasts, like seasonal forecast for the drought, and CO2 climatic projection to see how the water is likely to change according to the climate change scenario. And the idea, and this is yet to implement, this is the last part of the project, in our case, is to implement a dashboard where the user can log in and see how the water is likely to be available or not available in the next weeks, and see some effects, if in this case the reservoir, how the level of the reservoir is likely to become according to the exploitation of the water and the replenishment from the catchment. So this is all for my side. Thank you very much, Andrea. I'm happy to reply any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Matteo. Sometimes, we because we are, I say, plongé, into the topics, and sometimes, we look at things like, in a way that we know very well, and then it's not that easy, to transfer to other people. And this is, what also we have been discussing today. Communication is basic. Sharing information is absolutely basic. And of course, the digital twin helps a lot in sharing information and be able also to develop a new different landscape and scenario. But may I ask you a question? It's very simple. In few words, can you define a digital twin? What is a digital twin?
Well, thank you, Andrea. Digital twin now is becoming also a buzzword, I would say, and it's becoming very popular, probably abused. The digital twin is, in a sense, is a replica. It's a kind of a digital replica that mimics the physical world. It's widely used in the industrial sector, because you can say, in old words, you can say it's a kind of modeling architecture. It's a set of models. It's a set of models that, however, are constructed in a way that they reproduce the physical behavior of the world, or the physical. It can be a plant, it can be whatever. In this case, it's the catchment. Of course, the digital twin of the catchment means a set of models, mathematical models, we can say, that reconstruct how the precipitation falls into snow, for instance, or water, the snow accumulation, the evapotranspiration, the infiltration, the role of the water table, the role of the reservoir, when the reservoir will go in overflow or not. So you can imagine a set of models that are interconnected and linked, and you give rules to these models to behave in a way that the physical world does. So the eventually what you can do is to run simulations on the digital world and see the effects, and saving cost of waiting for the same impact to occur in the physical world when you don't have time to wait for that.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it's clear, I mean, and concise. Now, I mean, all speakers, I mean, presented and had their say on the topic of today. We can start, I mean, discussing, I mean, in this informal panel. And please, I mean, feel free, I mean, to interrupt and to enter into discussion. But I mean, now, I mean, I will start, I mean, from the last point that we discussed with Matteo about the digital twin. And because the digital twin is done also for being accessible. And how do you see, I mean, accessibility of a digital twin from not a specialized actor, let's say? I mean, we'll be speaking about participation. We'll be speaking about the matter that we have local communities. We mentioned the matter that we need to improve. We can improve climate resilience in the nexus between water, energy, and food. Also, pushing and facilitating the participation of the final users. But now, let's speak for a while. I mean, how digital twin can do that? I mean, what I mean, the requirements or the need for having people participating in this process. And this question is open, of course. I mean, I address to Matteo, but I mean, you are welcome to Jom. I mean, Fred, I mean, you are all welcome to participate.
Yeah, I do the first break the ice. I mean, the question is relevant because when we had to design the user interfaces, we asked ourselves the same question that you're posing to me, and we kind of did the same things that is done when you design a web interface, which is you have to look at the user personas. So who is the identikit? Who is the identikit? What is the type of person that will eventually log into the system? How old is he? What is his role? And what is his background, educational background? What is his objective, his pains, his gains? So when you ask all these questions, you need to understand exactly who is going to log in, who is going to access this type of information. Of course, it can be manifold, but we eventually define two types of persons. So the decision maker and the technical person that is likely to use massively the digital twin. So decision maker can be a kind of senior person that has to take a decision. And then he wants to see a plot. He wants to see things very rapidly. He wants to have a report. He wants to have a kind of an indicator how things are going. Is it too much water? Are we likely to expect, or too little water? That's it. So we had to implement a kind of an interface for this kind of person that doesn't want, and probably is not his role, to go into the details of the modeling architecture or the data stream, but wants to see in a glance how things are going to evolve more likely, and what is the impact of this kind of evolution on his decision matter. Then we have the technical person, that is likely a person that is going to help the decision maker. But also this person, on the other hand, wants to see the details, wants to see why things are happening, are occurring this time, why are evolving in this kind of thing. What happens if I change this? What happens if I change that? And this person has a more educational, maybe a technical background, is a younger person. And so we wanted to have both persons on board and say, but to allow a different vision in order to to make the things more easy to play with.
Thank you so much, Matteo. Any comments on this? I mean, because I think that's also something that is important from the point of view of maximizing, I mean, the participation. Jean, what is your point? What is your view in this regard? Jean? I cannot hear you any longer.
Answer, possibly I can also comment a bit.
Please.
Yes. Okay, thanks. I mean, when you are creating these portals, and we also have a portal in TransformAr, but we did it before also in other projects, and we have also something in our institute. I have to admit, it is a lot of learning by doing, actually. So, nowadays we have really portals directed to specific groups. We also would like to inform the general public, but we have, for example, also something for schools, because we think that awareness raising is very important, and that people have to learn it also from the start in schools. And teachers are also approaching us, for example, to ask, there are so many information about climate change, and some are critical and not, and I don't know what is now the real science here, and therefore we have something. We did something also for schools, as I said, and but then you always get a feedback. If the portal is really taken up, you get a feedback, and you get something like, look, this number I don't understand, or this graph is nice, but what does it say? And doing so, when the portal is really, say, partly accepted at least, you get this feedback, and then you can improve. And this is, of course, also the question of maintenance. Somebody has to improve. Yeah? And there we are back to this project type of work we do. That is often project-driven, and maintenance is then difficult. So this is simply the context we are working in, but a lot of it is really learning by doing, I have to admit.
Thank you, Fred. I was wondering about, I mean, how much, as Matteo said, I mean, digital twin it's a system that we use in order to mimic, a place, a territory, a situation, and that can allow us, to work on possible scenarios and forecast situations. But how much, the characteristics of the territory play an important role in building a digital twin, or applying a digital twin to different situations? Because Europe it's quite, a populated area of the world, with the trend of increasing urbanization. But how can we integrate this change in the pattern of Europe, considering that we are going to have bigger and bigger cities, larger areas dedicated to agriculture and industrial settlement, which are in between and interact with both the other two environments?
Okay, I would say that the complexity that you are highlighting of Europe in this sense, or we can say of urbanized area. Okay, so the complexity of our world, which is increasing, but goes together with the the emergence of data and the availability of data on this regard. So if you had you asked me this question like 10 or 15 years ago, I would have given a different answer. Because 10 or 15 years ago, there was no satellite, you know, the Sentinel constellation was not there. There was a lot of data on, numerical weather predictions. There was no reanalysis data available. And so now it is on the one hand true that the complexity is high, but on the other hand, that the type of modeling architectures, so the rapid development of modeling architectures, the rapid development of also machine learning techniques, the rapid enlargement, I would say, of data availability makes it, I would say, possible, not easy, but makes it possible to cope the complexity that you are mentioning. The challenge, I would say, is to, on the one hand, to be as flexible as possible to accommodate the complexity, the environmental complexity and the anthropogenic complexity. So it's a question of choice of algorithm, I would say, or modeling architecture. You have to be very flexible on the one hand, but you have to be very complete on the other hand, not to lose part of the puzzle, pieces of the puzzle of the complexity that are relevant to your case study. So it's, I would say that the challenge is here to be able to exploit this variety of data, but using, a kind of, I would say, kind of, as a picture, a kind of a Lego box. You have to put your Lego pieces according to the type of architecture or the type of complexity that your particular in situ environment is composed, but without reinventing the wheel. So you just have to assemble the pieces. So I think this is the modeling architecture that we, for instance, are using, that I think is the challenge to put together the two complexities.
Thank you, Theo. Yes, it's really, a complex environment. It goes beyond, our capacity, in my opinion. So there is maybe that we need also to resort to artificial intelligence and other tools, to facilitate also the capacity of digesting the data and make good use of data, because that's another very important point. I have a question from the audience, which is about how to. I am interpreting, the question, which is how to create trust between politics and technology. I guess that this is something like, how can we create a trustful interface between policy and science? But there's a question that I address to all of you. Do you think that we have enough connection between policy and science, to be able to address the challenges of the water sector? Fred, please.
Yes, actually we are working a lot. It's interface from science to policy, and not only in adaptation, but also mitigation when it concerns mitigation. So there's a long tradition, say, to work with politicians. And I think one has to understand also the concerns of politicians. So they are also human beings, and they have their problems, and would like to know certain things, of course. It helps if the start is really good science. You should this should be the fundament in the end, but then it has to be communicated, and it has to be communicated that it also fits to the concerns of the politicians, and you may say politicians, but also decision makers, so that their concerns are taken up and considered in the answers you provide. And after a while, and if you are still there, there will be a mutual understanding, hopefully, and also interaction. So, and yeah, I think this is how it works. The fundament is good science, but then communication and to take up the concerns of politicians, decision makers, what they really would like to know, and how it can be communicated. Also, uncertainty, of course, but in the end, you also have to come up with a statement. yeah, because this is what they have to implement.
Thank you, Fred. Yeah, I mean, quite very good point. Now, I mean, not directly, but in the partnership Water for All, I mean, we have one of the pillars which is dedicated to science policy interface building, which, of course, I mean, is it's revealing, I mean, diverse aspects that we could not consider at the beginning of the initiative, and how much is important, I mean, to build an efficient and well-working interface between who's going to take the decision, who's going to provide solutions, and to deeper into the research, and of course, I mean, and to connect this, I mean, to the real life environment, which means the business, the citizen, and so on. So once again, I think that we go back once again, I mean, to the concept of the quadruple helix, or well, the quintuple helix, where the fifth guest, I mean, is represented by the environment. I would like, I mean, to ask to each of you, I mean, a last question. I mean, I would like, I mean, to have, I mean, an answer from all of you, which is about, I mean, we have, I don't say an uncertain, but at least a concerning future about water. And this is not only Europe. I mean, this is it's a global concern. As we said several times, water is on the lips of everybody as a global concern, but then we need to address locally the related challenges. But should you say, listen, I mean, I've been working, I mean, in the water sector for years, I mean, and I know how much, I mean, the sectors are connected. We know how much water could be a fragmented domain on our planet. But should I ask you, in a broader vision of the future of water, about, I mean, if you want to ensure, really, I mean, a sustainable water management in the coming years, let's say in the coming decades or centuries, because change, I mean, takes time, I mean, to be on ground. What would you do, and what will you do not do? I mean, can you tell me in a nutshell, what is your recommendation, what we should do and what we should not do in order to ensure a sustainable water ecosystems for the next generations?
Okay, I can take the floor. The question is very strategic, so it's but it's well posed. I mean, it's a key question. I would say what I would do. I would take what the keynote speaker Richard told at the beginning. You know, to enlarge the point of view from the utility of the administration territory of the local partner to a broader area. I think this is kind of seems logical on the one hand, but is very new, however, because all the implementations and all the funding that have been released in the past years, see also the leakage detection, it's were very much concentrated on the specific plan, the specific administration, and without having a kind of an idea of the water cycle or outside of the factory, I would say. I mean, this paradigm is a change, is going to be probably necessary, but also not well accommodated, welcomed by the company, because it means that you have to interact with other people, interact with another administration. This is many ways cumbersome. It's confusionary, but it's necessary, I would say. This is what I would also suggest. This, take a look outside of your administration territory and see how the water is likely to move and the impact that you're having or others are having on you, etc. So try to find a kind of a holistic approach the system. The second question is what I would not do is to put fear to the people. And I want to elaborate a little bit. As I said also in my short speech, it's true that we are likely to be subject to more extremes. And on the one hand, it may be, kind of new for sure, and also more dramatic in the sense. But we do not have to put fear on the people, and because sometimes I see very dramatic, scenarios and speeches that are, threatening somehow people. I think that we as a people, and I say we as a people, we are the solution. We are not the cause. We are not the cause. We are the solution. And I would like this concept to be, be well welcomed by the people, that they can be partner in the solution. They can do the role. They can have a role. They can adapt. They are not the cause of this. And because if we put this kind of sentiment to the people, then they are more proactive and also engaged. Otherwise, if we put fear, I doubt that we, as a people, as a society, we will come out of this.
Thank you, Matteo. We still have a few minutes. Fred, do you want to contribute?
To me, firstly, again, awareness rising, that people know about what is happening and also accept it in a way. Then secondly, we have to increase the resilience of our water systems and of the nexus. Yeah? And we can spend money only once. So we really have to have a look at when we invest into infrastructure and other areas that it is climate proof on the one hand, how it impacts in the water nexus, and possibly also how it may help to mitigate, because when climate change is ongoing and too strong, we will really have problems to adapt. And there are measures which may help for adaptation and mitigation, so we can spend the money only once, then prioritize. And we have to counteract the too strong climate change, obviously. Yeah. But we have to accept that there will be events where the infrastructure doesn't help, and this was always so. And now we are even more exposed, and people have to accept that certain events may happen, and that they have to take care, and that they have to save lives, and that they have to listen to early warning and all that. Yeah. But when spending money, having a look at whether it is climate proof, whether and how it helps or doesn't help in the nexus, and whether it may help also for mitigation.
Many thanks, Fred. Any other comment from the other speakers? Okay. So, today, we heard, really key power messages. But I see that in the end, the role of mobilizing participation is basic, because there is the need for knowledge, absolutely, and the knowledge must be shared. And particularly we look at, the impact of the climate change, which is really running. It's a rush. Things are changing quickly. And I also agree on the comment of Fred about the matter that there is also the need for the people to be aware that change is happening, and also our behaviors needs to change accordingly. So I think that's then in the end what came out is that we really need a common effort by all the actors of our civil society to stand and to find together potential solutions, and particularly sustainable solutions in the long run. Then in the end, I mean, concerning water, we really want, I mean, a water smart society, and we really need that our water ecosystem remains resilient, sustainable, and that water is secure, because we need to secure water for our life. So then I think there's three key words: sustainability, resilience, sustainability, resilience, and secure water represent really, I mean, the key action that we should perform, I mean, in order to ensure a better future for our generation concerning water. So once again, I would like to thank all the speakers. We are perfectly in time, I mean, for this webinar. It has been a very much interesting webinar, and future ones, I mean, will follow, or still organized by ARSINOE and the sister project with the support of Water Europe. So once again, a big thank, I mean, to the speakers. A big thank to the audience who has been following us directly on Zoom and through the social media. And enjoy the day, and see you then, I mean, on next opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.